tried for something that was relatively artsy, but it's all relative, right?
Nice. Yeah, I have some weird art. I'm renting this house for the year in COVID, so I have some sort of like art deco retro art in the background.
That's cool.
It is kind of cool. She's got a bunch of art that's like this. Is kind of funky.
Welcome. I see a few familiar names, but some new names and pictures. And we have about 5 minutes before we get started. So if anybody wants to unmute and introduce themselves and kind of say where they are in their search, you are certainly welcome to do it. We've had folks make great connections this way through this 5 minutes of networking.
Who's going to break the ice? Are you back in Oregon, Karen, or are you still hiding out somewhere warm?
I am back in Oregon. I am. It's a cursing and a blessing at the same time. I'm happy to be at home, but you just heard my cat knock everything off of my desk. If you heard a crash, that's one of her favorite pastimes when she's not getting her way. Is to do that. Yeah, it's. I do miss the 85-degree weather.
There you go. Yeah, it is December, I guess.
We're going to give it a few more moments, and because we have so many people, we will try to start as close to noon Pacific as we can, Steve.
Cool. That works. good to see all the names join. Some familiar names and faces from online.
It is. Hi, Carlos. Sometimes I feel like the old romper room. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, everyone.
Carlos, since you are the least bashful of everybody joining, would you mind doing just a quick introduction while we have a minute, and maybe you can make a connection with someone else here while we're waiting?
Okay, I'm Carlos Gila. I'm a faculty at IE Business School. I teach search funds, and I'm starting to teach at Columbia in New York this coming March, if COVID permits. I have a very weak connection. I'm calling you from Spain today. I'm in the middle of the Pyrenees, and I might have to turn off my camera because it's taking too much of the bandwidth. So happy to help. I'm very glad you guys organized this webinar.
Thank you, Carlos. And it seems like your Wi-Fi is in the Pyrenees might be better than my Wi-Fi in Portland. So maybe I'll be switching service providers.
It's awesome, Carlos. I'm married to a Spaniard. My wife's from Barcelona, so we get to Barcelona every year or two. So maybe one. Are you in Madrid or Barcelona?
Well, I am based in Madrid, but I used to fly to Barcelona once or twice a week. Okay. Since COVID, everything has been canceled, and we all Zoom.
Exactly.
But I'm very close to Barcelona right now. I'm like 3 hours driving from Barcelona.
Okay, cool.
Maybe one of these. Spanish women. They're very tough.
I know, exactly. So now I got 2 kids too, so they keep me. They're half Spanish, so they equal 2 of them equals another Spaniard in the house. So.
That's great. Where are you based, Steve?
Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm. Oh, beautiful place too.
So, Mark, are we all set?
Yep, we're all set.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for doing that introduction. I hope others will connect with you, particularly folks who want to welcome you to New York in March as well. So if you welcome everybody, if you don't mind, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. It would be very helpful for us. And welcome to our Searchfunder session with Steve Ressler on 5 tips for self-funded searchers. This is proven to be our most popular event so far. We started our Searchfunder live streams this summer, and we've just been gradually ramping them up. And I thought that Steve was going to be the closer for the year, but we actually have one more event coming up on December 18th with our UK searchers, and I can let you know more information at the end. So at Searchfunder, we are a community for people who are looking to buy and operate a profitable business, and we help you along the journey from that exploration phase of, well, is this right for me? Can I possibly do it? Into that phase of, oh my gosh, I'm really doing it. Into that, oh my goodness, I am now the CEO of my own business and beyond. So we really want to help you along your journey. So if you are, whether you are a Searchfunder member or not, please feel free to reach out to me, Karen Spencer, or Mark Juan, or Luke Tactone, founders of Searchfunder. So I want to welcome Steve to this Searchfunder session. He is a serial entrepreneur with several successful exits, particularly in the gov tech space. He has been associated with 7 search funds in the search community, and he is a longtime Searchfunder member. We probably had about a third of the platform that we have now back when Steve joined us. So he's lived through the ups and downs, and I want to make sure that we spend all of our time on Steve. So Steve, welcome, and I look forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Karen, and thanks, Luke and Mark, for putting together such an awesome community. I just really enjoyed it. And I'm going to have slides today. If you want a copy of the slides, just email me. It's swrestler@gmail.com. So feel free to take notes. But if there's a bullet point or whatever, just send me an email. I'll get you a copy of the slides. And the title's a lie. I think I have more than 5 tips. So I started going and I got more, but really hoping for a fun conversation today. I'll pass on a lot of information. Hopefully we'll also have time for Q&A. And just excited to have all of you on the call today. I know it's tough to be a searcher. And as Karen said, different evolutions of the journey, the folks thinking about searching, the folks doing the hard work of finding a business or doing it. Kudos for you for all your hard work. Let's see if I can push the slides. How do I do that? Oh, there we go. So that's my background. I had a little bit more hair back then from that photo. The photo's a lie. But my background is I'm a serial entrepreneur and CEO, primarily in government technology. So I went to Miami of Ohio for undergrad during the Roethlisberger era, if there's any Steelers fans out there. I went to Penn for grad school right away under a government scholarship and spent 5 years working for Homeland Security and technology. I eventually launched a company called govloop.com, which was an online community for government employees, kind of a search funder, honestly, for government employees. And we had 250,000 members, fed, state, local government employees. We eventually bootstrapped. We sold that company to a company called Gov Delivery, which was kind of the MailChimp or Marketo for government, all the text messages or email from everyone from healthcare.gov to your local city and county. That company, we grew from 7 to 40 million ARR, sold it to Vista Private Equity, the largest software investor in the world, where I was the chief marketing officer and learned a lot about scaling SaaS businesses. I eventually joined a friend who had a small public safety software company called Collia, where I joined as the president, and we grew that business and recently sold it to Motorola Solutions. So kind of my day job is as an entrepreneur in government technology, SaaS, software, private equity. And then personally, I've always loved investing. So one of those folks who had a Roth IRA at 14, I think, read the Buffett letters and the Graham books and Constellation and Outsiders, and just always loved kind of value investing. I had done a little bit of DC technology angel investing, and I loved meeting entrepreneurs. I love talking about new businesses, but I didn't love the 9 strikeouts for 1 grand slam, which is angel investing. And I eventually found out about search. A friend of a friend had done search, and just it really clicked in my brain. And I read the books we've all read and the podcasts we've all listened to, and Searchfunder. And so I got involved as an investor. And generally, I think there's 3 ways as investors to invest in search. So one is investing in traditional search. So if you were going out and raising say a 400K fund, usually out of school, or you can invest in funds that do that, Pacific Lake and Footbridge and others, or you can invest in self-funded search. And in terms of traditional, I generally don't do traditional search investing. I invested in one fund, Footbridge Partner, which Greg's a big active on Searchfunder too. They do a great job. Sometimes I invest in equity gaps on traditional, but I primarily do self-funded search. And I've made 7 investments in 2020, all sizes and shapes, and a couple more coming. So really enjoy investing in self-funded searchers. And I get a lot of questions from folks from self-funded searchers around the process, what investors are interested in, different questions. So that's really the presentation for today. And other than that, I think I already mentioned, live in Washington, D.C. I got 2 kids. And yeah, if you copy the slide, just email me, or I'm quick on text as well. All right. All right, so there's gonna be basically 5 sections today. So I think there's kind of 5 key areas I get asked a lot around what does self-funded search look like for an investor. And so these are kind of the mechanisms of self-funded search. So one thing I get asked a lot is, what do self-funded deals look like? So I think in general, we all know the traditional structure on a deal, which in traditional search, as a searcher, you can earn up to 25%, by hitting these various tranches. Investors own 75% or potentially more, and there's usually generally a 7 to 8% preferred. So the question is, what does self-funded search generally look like, and what are some things self-funded searchers should think about once they have something under LOI, how to make their deal structure interesting for investors? So a couple of ways I look at it. So one, I think the IRR target I encourage folks to target towards is the 35% IRR hurdle. So that's the same hurdle as the last tranche of traditional search. I think, generally on self-funded, you should be able to model there, especially because you're using high leverage and you're buying things for generally lower multiples. So that should be kind of the base case for future projections. And generally, I recommend on base case, you're being reasonably conservative. You're using the same entry and exit multiple. You're also having the same growth rates as kind of the last 3 to 5 years of the business, how it's historically performing. Not, hey, it's been growing 0%. My model has this growing 20. The ideal business, hey, it's been growing 5%. Our model shows 5%. I'm going to buy it for 4.5x EBITDA. I'm selling at 4.5x EBITDA. And that measure should get to roughly 35% IRR. Generally, the self-funded deals have two parts of it. So there's a preferred interest rate for the investor. Generally, that I've seen that range from 8 to 15%, and the average that I've seen is around 10% as a preferred, and that's a participating preferred instrument. And then in general, there's a question around what is kind of the general common percentage of equity for investors. So it's close to the reverse of traditional search. So traditional search, remember, the investors, are owning 70 to 80%. It's generally roughly flipped for self-funded search. So on average, I've seen the common equity for an investors range from 20 to 50%. I'd say the average is around 30%. A couple of things I like to think about when you're trying to figure out what exactly amount of the common it should be is the term of kind of equity percent step up. So this is kind of concept used in highly leveraged deals, but kind of a simple math around it is, hey, if you were raising $500K on a $5 million enterprise value deal, 500 divided by 5 million, that's 10% is the ratio. A step up of 2.5 would be 25% as the common percentage. So, and in general, when you think about it, as you're building that base case, the 35% IRR, there are levers. You're making trade-offs between the common equity, the preferred return, and then also it varies a little bit on the deal, right? So the larger the deal, generally more equity to the investors, less to the searchers. The smaller the deal, might be closer to that 20% range. And then generally these are done primarily, and we'll show it in the next slides, through SBA loans. So if it's a $6 million deal, they're using 4.5 million of SBA debt. I pulled some averages from the 7 deals I've done this year to give you a sense of what deals look like. So once again, Stanford has on traditional search all this data, and you can really see it. For self-funded, there's not much out there. So I'm not saying these are the 100% answers, but giving you some guideposts and data of deals I've seen. Generally, I've seen deals on the average enterprise value for a deal I've done is $6.5 million. The range has been 3 to 10, so they varied some. Some have been on the smaller side, some are larger. Generally, they're buying them for around 4.5x EBITDA. I've done deals 3 to 6x, and then generally it's about 80% debt. I've seen, and that debt I include SBA plus seller debt in there. So they're highly leveraged transactions. So even more so than traditional search. And I've seen deals as high as 90% leverage, as low as 60% in the format. And in general, the equity rates when a self-funded searcher is going out to talk to investors, the average deal I've done is raising about 1.4 million as an equity check. But I've seen ranges on deals I've done from 300K to 2.25 million. So that's kind of some ballpark guidance, and kind of back to the previous slide. I always think kind of, if people say, hey, what's a good starting point? I say, hey, 30% common, 10% perhaps a good starting point in the journey as you start to talk to investors. And then what do self-funded searchers look like? And what industries are they looking at? So, one I've seen is some of it, there's a lot of overlap with traditional search. So you see a lot of folks from the classic private equity, investment banking, consulting, and military, which would be similar. I've seen more mid-career searchers in self-funded. So some of those, maybe they went to one of the traditional schools, Harvard, Booth, Stanford, but 5 years later, after working, now they're ready to do a search. I've seen a number of folks that work at private equity currently, or even more at private equity-backed companies that, hey, kind of learn how to do, leverage buyouts. They've learned how to improve operational efficiency, and now they're looking to buy something for themselves. I've seen a number of kind of Fortune 100 execs. So, depends what you mean by mid-career, but it's a range. It's kind of like the Midwest in geography, from Ohio to Nebraska. It's a range. But I've seen a number of folks that, hey, they might know an industry super well, and now they want to go buy a small business in that industry. And then last but not least, I'd say what's interesting, I've seen more technologists lately. So folks that have worked at, the FANG, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, or related, high-tech companies that are looking to do self-funded search, often with a bent towards SaaS software or e-commerce, but not necessarily. Some of those folks still are just kind of interested in the category. And then I know there's a number of international folks on the call. I'd say self-funded search, from my perspective, is a little bit behind in international, but I've met a number of folks that are like the first self-funded searcher in a country. So they said, hey, search is new to X country. We've been doing it for a few years. There's maybe 10 traditional searchers. I'm trying to be the first ever self-funded searcher, which is kind of interesting. Got some notes there. And then some other questions around deal terms, deal structures. Again, what do these deals look like? The typical deal terms, a lot is on the searcher. The searcher is the majority owner on a self-funded search. So, it is, as an investor, you're betting a lot on the individual searcher. But there are some rights. There's generally items like majority approval of investors is needed for significant items like, acquisitions, big changes to the searcher CEO's compensation, dilution of equity, major items. Generally, most of these deals have a lead investor. The lead investor typically gets a board seat. It's a typical deal term. And then one thing that's been kind of interesting on deal structure, about 2/3 of the deals I've done have been LLCs, 1/3 have been C Corps. So I know there've been some good threads on Searchfunder on that debate of LLC versus C Corp. If you are eligible for a C Corp, or if you are a C Corp, you may be eligible for QSBS, which is Qualified Small Business Stock, which is a capital gains exclusion. It's Section 1202. And so a number of searchers are starting to structure their deals as C Corp, because if you hold that C Corp for 5 years and sell it, 100% of your capital gains are excluded, up to $10 million per individual person. So it's a great tax instrument. The questions often get around items like, is the business, only certain businesses qualify for this exclusion? And then generally, if you do a C Corp, you're not paying out dividends over time, because you don't want to pay the C Corp tax rate plus the individual taxes to the investors. So often those deals, the kind of pick the preferred interest rolls to the end. So you have to kind of get the investors on board. And other than that, I'd say generally they're done as LLCs. Some do cash distributions along the way, some that are faster growing, try to roll a little bit forward before paying it off. All right, so we'll keep it going. So that was kind of my deal structure section, and then happy, Kara, do you want to just roll questions at the end? Do you want me to pause at each section? Any preference?
I'd like to go through. We have a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
I think I'd like to roll all the way through because this is such a meaty presentation. I want to make sure you give time for everything.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna just go through it and then we'll get them at the end. So next section is investors. So how do you build your investor team? How should you think they're investors in self-funded search? So I recommend when you're a self-funded searcher to build a team with a good mix of folks. I think you want professional investors, folks that have seen hundreds of deals, they know how to do deals, they think of it with an investor mindset. I think you want some current and former operators with some, S&B, C-suite, or industry experience. Sometimes I've seen that as fellow former searchers that know S&B. Sometimes I've seen that, hey, that exec at a Fortune 100 company may get one of their past partners to invest in the company. And then I do like having a little bit of friends and family. I think you want folks that are individual. They're passionate cheerleaders for you. They're there because they want to support you in this journey. And you really want to mix. And I think one key thing I recommend is you do want folks that are treating the investment professionally, people that know the nuance of SBA and debt. The SBA has a lot of requirements on the individual investors, just of sharing 2 months of bank statements, which if you've never invested in one of these things and you're a dentist, you're very confused. And as a searcher, it can be a lot of work on you to get all those documents. And then you want some help. You want some best practice of growing companies. So most self-funded searchers do self-funded because they want to be in control and they want to be the boss. But you do want to surround yourself with really smart people that can help you in the journey. And I think you get that out of your investors. In terms of who to target for self-funded investing, generally traditional search investors are not interested in self-funded for a couple of reasons. So one is there's a limitation with the SBA 7A loan program where no individual can own more than 20% of the economic interest without getting the personal guarantee on themselves as well. So and then 20% economic interest ends up being about 13% ownership because of the preferred instrument as well. So that limits basically traditional search folks' interest in the category, and then generally that limitation limits the check size. So generally you're seeing folks put in 50 to 250K as an investor into these deals. I think the most you can put in is maybe 400K. But that limitation of check size often is uninteresting to folks that are trying to invest larger pools of capital. I think if you have a larger self-funded deal, maybe one that's outside of the SBA limits, I've seen some self-funded searchers do deals like that may require 2 to 4 million of equity checks. That's when some traditional search folks get more interested. Although I would say they're generally looking for search terms that look closer to traditional search in terms of ownership. So, if you're raising $4 million and you're going to traditional investors, you're unlikely to keep 70% common ownership. It's starting to look you'll get pressure to make it look more traditional. And then what's fun is there's a group of folks that are starting to invest more in the self-funded category. As I said, I'm quite active in the space, but I've done a lot of deals with a number of great, smart self-funded investors. Robert Graham's great, a searcher himself who's closed on a transaction. He invests with the group, Search Investment Group. Nick is also on Searchfunder, has bought and owns a series of assets. He has a group called Cub Investments. This guy, Alex Wang at Riviera. And once again, just send me an email. I can send you the slides. Jim Sharp at HBS is the professor on self-funded search there. He only invests in HBS folks. So, and he's got plenty of flow, and I think he's oversubscribed, so no need to send it to him, but he's good if you're HBS. And then there's a number of folks. I often invest with a guy called Alex Mears in DC, Thomas Schulz, Ben Rizzo, a bunch of folks on the list. Did I? Hold on, sorry. Give me a half a second. My share my screen was not working for a second. All right, here we go. So we got, when you speak into investors, I think I skipped a slide early on, a couple things to do. So as I mentioned, generally you're putting together a team. This is at the bottom. I see usually around 10 to 15 investors on the cap table. Check sizes range from 25 to 500K. As I said, a lot are in that kind of 50 to 250K as you're raising $1 million. Folks raising $1 million, they often look at 1 to 2 people doing 250, 3 to 4 doing 100, and then some 25s and 50. In terms of when to talk to investors, when you're self-funded, I think it's helpful to talk to 3 or 4 connected investors early on. Although I do recommend you don't need to talk to 15 or 20. A lot of investors are busy, and sometimes they have a different day job, so they really want to talk to you once the deal is real and you have something under on a LOI. So I would say spend some time there, but not too much time. People, the self-funded investors often share great deals, so you don't need to know them all, just a couple good folks. And then last but not least on that piece, I would say I have not, all great deals I've seen get funded. So if you have a great deal, and there could be variations on a great deal, but think classic search, enduring business, great price, great economics, your background fits for the business, the instrument seems fair to all sides, the investor and the operator, they generally get funded. So I wouldn't worry too much of that. If you find something great, it generally gets funded. What investors are looking for aren't too different than traditional search. It's really why you. So, why are you doing this, right? Why did you get into search? Do you understand what you're getting into? 6 months from now, you might self-identify as a searcher, but to your neighbor, you might be the CEO of a HVAC company, right? So, are you going to be fine with being the CEO of the HVAC company as what you really are? Looking at the team, so not just you, but why this industry? What does the next level of management look like? Is there a good number 2 or 3 in there? Good business fundamentals. I won't go over that. That's in plenty of books. But the traditional search quality, and often I see that sometimes you get a little bit of deal heat, and you see high customer concentration or cyclical businesses or low recurring. And so some of the deals I've seen that don't get done are kind of those, because of those, they don't meet the classic fundamentals. And then last, is it a fair price? Is the deal structured the right way? Does the investor instrument feel within market? And I did that slide already. And so that's kind of investors. So think about that. So kind of first thing was about deal structure. Second was investors. This is kind of how I think about third-party advisors and how to think about it. So up front, I think there's a little bit of a debate on third-party advisors of whether to use local advisors located in the business, in the area you're buying this business, or kind of self-funded experts. And I think the trade-off is, the local folks may help with local connections. It may help you kind of once you're there, down operating. Might be easier to work with, a bank with a local branch, or accountants that know the area very well and can connect you to other businesses. I think the positive of national is they're just familiar with self-funded, so it's kind of a unique sub-industry. So if you go to a local bank and tell someone what you're doing, sometimes they're just very confused of how to structure this loan or to get their heads around it. So the good news about the national providers is they understand the uniqueness of your situation, and quite importantly, they align their fees to self-funded search. And so what that means is, often it's contingent fees or broken deal discounts, or most of them roll dead deal fees into the next transaction, because most of them realize it takes 3 LOIs to get a deal done. So the local person may, when you're doing a Q of E and then it blows up, might probably just wants to get paid. They don't really care, and they don't trust you're going to do a next transaction. But more of the national folks know the game, so they're happy to roll their deals forward. In terms of meeting them, I would optimize your time with them. Meet them before you need them. So most of these folks on this list will take intro calls. They're busy folks, and they're not going to want to do 5 calls with you before. But all of them have told me they love meeting searchers before they need it. But I'd say on your side, try to do as much work you can do and be prepared both ahead of time for your meetings. So, a lot of the one-on-one information you can find online on Searchfunder or elsewhere. And then as you're working with them, the more you're prepared, the more you can help minimize fees. So if you've done your, done preliminary work that you can do, it helps them really focus their time and energy on the things you can't do. And then last but not least, what I like about all these folks is they've done a ton of deals. So they can help you when you may have deal heat around, hey, you really think this is the deal. Here's what I'm seeing. And so the good partners will help that. And then there's a number of them. I'm not going to rattle them all off, but I think one thing I would say is, and I kept this primarily around self-funded advisors. You'll find, if you go to Searchfunder or others, there's some folks that focus primarily on supporting traditional searchers, and some focus on primarily self-funded, and some do both. And I think it's good to know where those advisors sit. So, there's some folks, for example, like Goodwin, I've heard does a phenomenal job at the traditional level. You don't see them very much at self-funded, partly just kind of the pricing and what they do. So, these are just some ones on the list. Once again, just srussell@gmail, sending the slide. All these folks have done numerous self-funded deals that I've been involved with. All right, so that is 3. So that is, if you think about that, that's a little bit before. So we have kind of deal structure, investors, the third-party advisors that do the deal. Here's just kind of some tips post-deal. So, hey, you've closed the deal. One thing I've seen a lot of searchers do is really focus on a 100-day plan. So, there's plenty of this online when you take a new job and you're an executive. 90-day plan's a classic book from Harvard Business School, but really thinking through, how are you going to operate the first 100 days, and really the classic stuff. Focus on listening, doing no harm, trying to find low risk, quick wins, where it could be, hey, all the employees have been complaining about this one thing for 5 years, and you fix it for them. So really, the 100 days really sets the tone. In terms of the quarterly cadence, I've seen often 2 boards where, this varies a little bit by company, but I've often seen 2 boards, an advisory board, which is say the 10 to 15 people on the cap table that meets quarterly. And then they may have an official kind of full, more of an executive board that might be 4 to 5 folks that are truly hands-on, rolling up their sleeves, doing the work. I would recommend on the full board, you find a mix of operators, but also just great classic capital allocators, folks on the finance side, so much of how to drive the business with the financial leverage to help you think through growth, et cetera. As mentioned before, usually the lead investor has a board role. Quarterly reportings, I think really important. Most of the board meetings, you're presenting some quarterly data, and you thinking through what are the KPIs you want to share, what tools do you want to use to put out this information. There's great tools. I think Visible is one I've seen on a couple of my investments where they do to share investment updates. Don't be afraid to use investors for ad hoc requests. What I've seen as an advisor to numerous companies is the best stuff happens outside the board meeting. The board meeting, can be a little bit formal and you got 12 people on a call, but the best operators use advisors to help them through ad hoc things. So it might be hiring, hey, I'm trying to hire a CFO. So you tap your finance person. What should I look for in that job description? Or, you might be having an employee matter and you need some guidance on how to handle a situation. Use your investor for the ad hoc requests around that. Another piece around investors, I encourage folks to try to connect investors to each other. Just little things, like I've seen it where, in some of these advisory calls, everyone's BCC'd and on phone, and there's really not much of a community. And then other ones where I've seen, hey, everyone's emails on the item, and the videos on the board meetings, and the operator starts connecting folks of, hey, Karen, you really should meet Mark. You guys both have something in common. And that builds momentum and interest and keeps your investors, advisors on board, which is really helpful. A couple last ones. I encourage folks to create an operating cadence of however you want to operate the business. EOS is a popular operating cadence and mechanism used by a lot of operators these days. It's almost like a cult religion, but it's pretty effective. So I encourage folks to check that one out. Other ones are Rockefeller Habits is another methodology. OKRs are another methodology. I like this guy, David Sachs from Yammer. He calls it the cadence, which is his methodology of the quarterly rhythm. And then last, a couple fun ones. I've seen this done where it doesn't work for all businesses, but a couple ones I've been involved with, they create like a little bit of a friends and family discount that get all your advisors, talking about you all the time. So if it's obviously if it's consumer, it's easy to give someone a 20% off if you're a pool maintenance and you live in the area. But I think thinking of your advisory folks as other folks that can sell on your behalf, even if it doesn't make a ton of sense, but they're your champions out in the field. So find ways to have them help sell for you. Another investment I'm in, and they actually have a blurb. So on every update, they basically say, what we want from you. And the ask is like, we are looking for intros for, VPs of HR in this industry. Here's the actual blurb we use. And you're kind of giving the investors the homework. So you're telling them to sell for you. And then the next board meeting, they say, hey, guess what? Luke's on the top. He gave me 3 intros. So it creates a little competition. So kind of an interesting one. All right. I'm rounding the corner near the end. Here's just a couple small tips. I couldn't kind of exactly find where to put them, so I just kind of put them in my end small tips. One thing I would just say, just find something, in the end, part of why we all get into search funds is we love small business and we think it's a great business model and all those pieces. But I really encourage you to find a company in the industry you're passionate about. You're in the end going to be working in the industry, running this business. And as an investor, you can really tell the folks that are just fired up and excited for the business, and the folks that are like fired up for the spreadsheet, right? Like the spreadsheet math is just phenomenal. And I just encourage you to focus on something you're passionate about in the industry, and find a way to get excited day in, day out, because you're going to be the one who's motivating the team. You're going to have to be working. You're not working 30 hours a week. You're working 60-hour weeks. So keeps you motivated and going. I'd encourage folks to create an easily shareable one-pager. Often in this process, as you get closer to LOI, you're talking to investors. Plenty of folks have a sim and a model, and often folks want you to sign an NDA before they give it to an investor. Give the investors a teaser, a one-pager. It doesn't have all the information, but these are busy people. They're on their phone. So is there something they can get a name on the phone, click it, get basic information before responding? A silly one, it's more of a pet peeve for me, but I've seen this help the few that have done it. Try to set up DocuSigns or HelloSign for your NDAs and deal docs. I've seen just a number of folks, when you're trying to talk to investors, and the thing you're waiting on to book the meeting is getting them to sign an NDA, when they can do it 2 clicks on their phone and sign it versus download the PDF, open the PDF, hit signature. We've all done it. It's a pain in the butt. Make it easy for the people you're working with, and I'd say that both NDAs and deal docs. And a couple other minor communication ones is just, always send the calendar invite. You can send Calendly. You can set it up so it sends a reminder, so we make sure we're both there. Clarify whether it's Zoom or phone. And then a small minor one, always confirm receipt of wire transfers. So you're often asking all your investors for do this, and do the confirmation. When they do it, hey, I got the wire receipt. A couple last ones. Really, every touch point is a way you're starting to meet people. So, and with self-funded search, so much is on the searcher. And as an investor, you're really betting on their integrity, their candor, and transparency. And so I think in every interaction you're doing with folks, knowing and thinking about and holding yourself in the way you treat people how you want to be treated, be someone of respect, be transparent about bad news and risks. If there's something clearly wrong about the business, 40% of the revenue's largest customer, be upfront with it. So I think just generally, it's not rocket science, but I've seen some of the best searchers. That's what they're really good at. Just they're clear over communicators. They're very upfront. They're by the book. They let you know what's good about the deal and what's bad about the deal. And then they're constantly updating you. So they say, hey, every 2 weeks, if they're in an LOI, they give you the 2-week update. Hey, we're halfway through the QV. It doesn't have to be a 12-page email, just some quick bullet points. They're over communicating as the deal gets to the finish line. So just classic over communications. And I wanted to save time for questions. So once again, thank you for your time. Just email me, srussell@gmail.com, or send me a text, and happy to send the slides. And in general, I love the search community. It's been 2020 has been a weird year, but search has been one of the highlights for me. Just meeting so many amazing people, super interesting businesses, and bringing a little bit that entrepreneur spirit to America as always, and internationally, which is awesome. So I'll pass it back to you, Karen.
This was wonderful, Steve. Thank you so much. And if you want, we can also, after the event, post the slides to the event page, so folks can grab them there. I suspect that you'll want to hear from folks as well. So I would encourage everybody to take you up on your offer to connect. And I appreciate your doing that as well. So I have a couple of questions, and then we have ones in the chat as well. And one question that came up over the weekend from an international searcher was about self-funded investors. So it's a self-funded international searcher. And they're like, how do I, who should I reach out to if I'm looking to go down that avenue? And I wondered if you had any insights.
Yeah, so I think if I was an international searcher, just pick the country, I would do two things. So I would try to find the ecosystem, just generally search, right? Traditional and self-funded, and certain countries, right? UK, like Simon Webster's a big deal, and there's a whole community around him. And I think LBS, London Business School, has a class now. So try to find your country specific classic search community. And then I think building the international community as well. So building your network broadly. And then when you get to the deal stage, I think understanding both those levers. So there'll be in some countries where the traditional investors just want to do self-funded, but I bet a couple of them will want to. And then also looking abroad, and I put it on my slide of self-funded searchers. So I did a Brazilian software deal this year. That was a self-funded searcher out of HBS. That was super fun. So I've seen folks invest in self-funded deals internationally as well.
Thank you, Steve. And we also have our deal matching feature on Searchfunder that I should plug too. So if you have a deal in hand, it will help you with networking. But it's always great to hear from somebody who is part of the ecosystem. And another question that I receive a lot, and it comes in a variety of different ways, but the question always boils down to, what do you look for as you're investing in the searcher themselves? You talked about integrity and passion. Is there anything else that you're looking at?
Yep. So I think there was in there a couple ways of like, what do you look for in a deal? And it's really kind of, I said it's team, business, and then the finance in the deal. On the person, I think showing a track record of success. There's kind of a couple things. Track record of success, I generally like it if they've managed people before. So that's not necessarily you have to, but some things if you've done it, right? So generally these businesses, you're going in and managing a team of 5 or 10 or 30 people. So showing that you can manage a workforce, showing kind of why this business and why you, right? I think it's a really important thing. So just, I think, once again, I think some folks, often it just feels like they saw the sim, it sounded interesting, and I really want to know that you're excited for this business. Why you? I think showing you've done the diligence too. So you'll see on some of them where the diligence they've done is amazing. Where it's like, oh, not only I've done X and Y, but I called their 4 closest competitors as a prospective client, and I talked to 5 other searchers that also own businesses that are crane businesses or HVAC businesses, and you can tell that they've just done the amount of diligence. So I think it's classic. You've done your homework is a big piece of it.
Thank you, Stephen. I should make a plug right now. If you're doing your diligence or just getting started as a searcher, you have access to IBIS World reports through Searchfunder as the member. Each report costs retail $900. So getting it as part of your free if you post or comment on Searchfunder is an awesome deal. So that's one thing. And then the other is, as you're going through the due diligence process, we are rapidly closing in on being able to provide BVR deal stats. So everybody who's talking to you should be very well prepared when the time counts.
Yeah, and your materials show off, right? So I've seen when you put together your own sim, is it a quality sim? The model you prepared is a good quality model, and you should have, obviously, like anything in life, right? You should have done a draft and got 3 friends to beat it up and made it better. And even this presentation, actually, I had 5 or 6 friends look at the deck and give me feedback before I came here. So it wasn't, even though it's my first time speaking publicly, I had the workshop the presentation.
Thank you for doing that work. It's just a wonderful presentation. Mark, do you have a question queued up? I know we had several in the chat.
Yeah, I definitely do. So Piyush wants to know, how is a searcher's carry usually structured in a self-funded deal? The traditional search fund model has it at 25% with 3 tranches, kind of by performance, how long you stay in it, and that kind of vesting. For self-funded searchers, I know it's not completely a carry, but how do you see most of the searchers get their money out?
Yep. So generally, as I said, traditional search, the pref is 7 to 8% to the investor, and then they're owning 75%. So the searcher is getting their tranches up to 25. In self-funded, the searcher generally is owning 50 to 80%. It can vary by deal size, et cetera. And so the general thing I've seen is the deals are roughly 70% ownership for the searcher and 30% to the investors, and roughly a 10% preferred return. And once again, there are ranges, and I put ranges in the deck, but that's a ballpark guidance of how it works. I've seen some other instruments as well where they're having basically a preferred with a hurdles based on MOIC, where hey, if the deal ends up returning 3x or 4x or 5x, there's some variation of splitting the equity as well. But generally it's a classic, hey, 70%, the searcher's got a deal and they're going after, hey, the deal terms are X. And generally that's a starting point, and it depends how the structure unfolds and how much you're raising, et cetera.
And speaking about structured, I have a question from Chris, and Chris asks, are the terms that are made between self-funded and traditional models more about who you are trying to raise from, who your investors are, or is it really about the size of the company that you're trying to acquire?
Yeah, so let me try to think on that. So, well, one, it depends a lot on size and if you're using the SBA instrument. So I say most of the self-funded deals I'm referring to are generally trying to use kind of buying a $6.5 million business and using, SBA loans for 4 million or so, and sellers for 1. So you're really only raising $1.5 million, maybe 500K. When I've seen larger deals, and say you're trying to buy a $12 million deal and you're not using SBA, right? So maybe because SBA caps at 5 million. So you either use an SBA plus something, or you're just doing non-SBA. Those are when the deals start looking more similar to traditional, both in terms of generally around the equity ownership concept. So I think if that answers the question.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks. Mark, you're up.
So Jigar wants to know, can you elaborate on percentage equity raised versus equity plus preferred dividend given? For example, a searcher raises 50% of their equity as preferred equity with 10% dividend and a 20% equity kicker. What are typical structures like this? Sorry, it's a little bit beyond my understanding, but
yeah, I think I got a couple of those questions. I think I've answered most of them. It's in the slide deck, and I'd say have people respond, just write me directly if you have any questions around it. The last question around, like, is it could you still get self-funded economics if you're trying to raise 3 million versus $1 million? You can always try to, but I think my general guidepost is that classic SBA deal, and you're raising 500K to $1.5 million. The larger check size you're getting up, 2 to 3 million for, it's looking a little bit more like traditional. You might be able to still own a majority, but it's not going to be 80%. It's probably closer to 50. But once again, and that's partly because you're starting to go to more institutional money. You're starting to go to family offices, et cetera, and more traditional investors. And then Jeremy had a question on the step up component. Yeah, a lot of people get kind of stuck on this. This is my simple math. So some people say, hey, well, how do I decide what percent to give to investors? You're saying 30% is about average. One math equation I use is, if you're buying a business for $5 million and you need 500K of equity, 500 divided by 5 million is 10%. And I kind of do the math on most of my deals and see, hey, what's the general step up? It's not 500 divided by 5 million, which is kind of traditional, like a venture math deal. There's a step up. So if it's 2 times that, instead of 10%, you would own 20% as an investor. Or if you're raising $1 million on 5, that's 20%. A 2x step up would be 40. So just gives you some ballpark things to work with as you're looking at IRR, and you're working with preferred and common in the instrument.
The next question is about diligence costs, whether you've seen it built into the subscription terms or the agreement in exchange for equities.
Yep, usually those are in the total kind of total cost and raise. So when an investor, if they're buying a business for $5 million, and the transaction cost of the QOV and the accounting work, et cetera, are all kind of bundled in the total kind of 5.3 million raise.
So Mark, do you want to do the next one?
And then that one last one, sorry, I see in there. Have you seen it where basically you raise money for the diligence cost in exchange? I've seen that a couple of times. So say most of the folks you work with will kind of roll the deals into roll the fees into the deal. I've seen a couple ones where they, based the way the transaction third-party cost, the searcher needed to come up with, say, 50K up front, and they raised a little bit of money from some of the potential investors to cover that 50K.
So Kusum wants to know, well, first she wants to thank you for a great presentation. And she wants to know that you say great deals always get funded when they have classically strong fundamentals, but most deals have some hair on it. Can you provide some specific about what matters to you the most, where you won't compromise, for instance, 50% recurring revenue at least? Would you be willing to compromise more on things like EBITDA margin and things like that?
Yeah, this is a good question. And yeah, I mean, no deal is perfect, right? So, understand that. I think customer concentration is a tough one, right? So a lot of the ones I've seen that felt tough, may have like, three folks represent 50% of their revenue. So I think customer concentration, it doesn't have to be the perfect ideal, 1,000 customers, no one's more than 1%, but I think some extreme customer concentration can be tough to get around. I think, ideally you want to see a story with the financials. So, I've looked at a number of things where it's bouncing around, right? So, hey, the last 7 years, it's four, revenue say it's 4.38, 4.2, 3.6, 3.4, 3.8. So it doesn't have a story where, ideally you want to see, hey, it's classically been compounding 5% every year. And so the story feels good. I think a lot of this is about the comfort in the model that, hey, if you do nothing, if you do no harm, will the business continue to grow and do well? And then that's the base case. And then the upside case is, hey, you're going to bring some, extra sales capacity. You're going to bring some kind of more modern fundamentals and really grow the thing. So, I think customer concentration is tough, really tough. I think highly cyclical businesses can be really tough. Would be kind of a couple of the items. And I think just making sure, like anything, once again, workshop it, make sure you don't have deal heat and run it by a couple. Maybe you're in a mastermind group on Searchfunder with 5 other folks, and you show the deal where you're close and say, am I crazy on this one, or beat me up? So you at least have answers to all the obvious questions.
Karen?
I realize we're getting a little low on time, so I'm going to do a quick commercial break, Steve. And then do you have a few minutes to go over time to answer a few more questions?
I'm actually a decent hard stop at 4, but
Okay, great.
I'm available if people want to email me, just srustler@gmail.
Okay, great. So Mark, while I do this, can you take a look at the chat and see if there's maybe 1 or 2 more questions we can ask? So
Yeah,
I wanted to let folks know about our upcoming events. I mentioned the December 18th UK biweekly brainstorming that's happening on Friday. Then we have being a new operator during a pandemic with Bruce Van. He purchased this company in February of 2020, right before the stay-at-home orders went into effect in March in the US. Then we have on January 7th, Robert Graham, Eli Drucker, and Jordan Carter of the Search Investor Group talking about reducing the risk of a failed search. And Steve just mentioned Robert earlier in this session. We'll then do a operations session on finding your niche and knowing your pinch points. This is going to be a session for someone outside the search fund space, but we're going to be talking about a critical operation issue. And then on January 14th, we will have Andy Locke of the Goodwin Law Firm answering your questions about how to get started, primarily with the traditional search fund model and how to get set up as well. So I really look forward to seeing you either on Friday or in the new year in one of our wonderful upcoming sessions. And if you have any questions about Searchfunder, please stay on after this, and I will be happy to answer them at that time. Thank you, Steve, for your patience with that.
Yeah, I think there's just one final question that I think is pretty broad that people might want to know. How many self-funded searchers reach out to you per quarter or year? And is there anything that really stands out to you that causes you to focus on one searcher instead of another?
Yeah, so I actually keep notes whenever I talk to someone. I've talked to 120 self-funded searchers this year, so I'm happy to take a quick call with anyone. Sometimes they're early stage thinking about search. Sometimes they left and they're actively doing it, and also sometimes they have an LOI. So I'm happy to do that. Once again, reach out to me, and it's probably see. I feel like there's been growth now. So, solid deals that are live, I'm seeing, probably 4 or 5 a month. So of solid live deals. So it's been an interesting space. And then I guess for the last question, on deciding not to invest, it's really been mostly on the ones I've said before. So like, it's either like just not the classic good quality business, too cyclical, too much customer concentration. The story of the searcher didn't fit and match in my mind. That, are they going to want to do it for 5 years and be able to roll up the sleeves, or or sometimes the instruments just a little bit kind of either too unfavorable to the investor, or I've seen some instruments that are a little bit too unfavorable for the operator, where I'm like, hey, 2 years from now, this operator is not going to be excited to run this full time. So it's just lining up those key items. But I really enjoy it. Thanks, Karen, Mark, and Luke. Searchfunder is wonderful. What you guys are doing is amazing. And thanks all the searchers. It's not easy out there. I know it's a grind. And if I can help you at all, would love to help and keep up the good fight.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to give you at least virtual applause. It was a wonderful presentation. I learned a lot. And I thank you for being so available and accessible for our searchers.
Awesome. Thanks. Have a great one.
I know. And we'll stay on. Mark and I will stay on. But if anybody has any questions about Searchfunder, you can put them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask away. Lovely to see you, Jay.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I had a question about the the IBIS reports.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be a permanent part of Searchfunder, or are you guys still trying to figure that out?
It is going to be a permanent part. We signed a big fat master license agreement in October. Our searchers now have basically access to as many IBIS World reports as you can possibly read in a month. So you have access to 50 a month right now. So it should help. And then Mark is working fast and feverishly on the back end to make that interface even better. So it's going to get better fairly quickly. Right, Mark?
Yeah, for sure. We're looking for a little bit of a deeper integration, so it's more than just PDF downloads, and you have interactive charts and things like that.
Well, cool. Thanks for Mark and Karen and team. Thanks for offering that service. It's been invaluable to get quick market insights on a particular industry.
Thank you. We love hearing that. And if there are other resources that we can try to bring in for you, that we're able to negotiate basically kind of a group discount, we are happy to reach out and see if we can't bring that in.
That sounds good.
Any other questions from folks about Searchfunder or about search in general? Always happy to answer them.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean, I guess maybe it goes without saying, but this is the first event I saw that's focused on self-funded searchers. So I'm guessing you can still be a part of Searchfunder if you are a self-funded search.
Yes, we also have some folks who consider themselves to be alternative model searchers as well. So this is a
I haven't heard that
space
term.
for both.
Is that like hybrid, or are they trying to do two?
Sometimes they try to do different models. Like David say, he did a basically kind of a quasi self-funded search / startup at the same time. So he bought a startup in the kind of biofarming space, which is completely not the traditional model industry, or even the model that most self-funded searchers use. But his experience and passion was in biopharma, so farming.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
Hey, Karen, this is Johnson. Who is that did the biopharma startup?
I may have the name wrong, but I think it was David Say, and I want to say it's TSE, but sometimes I get names backwards. I am looking it up as we speak. TZE, Nova Nutrients. And we did an interview with him, and I can put that in the chat.
I found it. I found it. Thank you.
Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. And I'm happy to answer other questions. We're kind of a very unique space, so I welcome any that you may have.
It says that last link expired. I don't know if anyone else got the same.
Oh, you know what? We have some content that is only for Searchfunder members, so that link is for and that was David's request, is to have the interview only for searchers, for Searchfunder members. But if you like, we do have a 30-day free trial that you can do in order to be able to. You do have to put a credit card in, because that's how we help validate that you're a real life person and not a robot. For the free trial, but it is completely free.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for putting this together. This was it was a unique vantage point, so it really stuck out.
Our pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you at future events in the new year.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. So this will be the last call for questions.
Hey, Karen, this is Ambi. I'm not able to turn on my camera, so apologize for that. But you mentioned about the resources. So I think IBIS is great. There was one of my, I was talking to another search funder in Bay Area. He mentioned something about the Business Brokerage Press. They publish a business reference guide, which is basically the pricing information for all the small businesses across the nation. So maybe you want to take a look at it. If there's some group discount we can get, that would be awesome. I posted the link on the chat section.
Great, thank you. And I will share that with Luke, who is handling our discussions with third parties.
Got it.
And I'm sharing it right now.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks. That's really helpful to know. Appreciate it. I guess this is that I said that was my last call for questions, but I'm happy to answer one more. Well, Mark, I want to thank you for co-hosting this with me. It was awesome.
Problem. Well, I guess thanks for participating, everyone, and you can feel free to message us at any time.
Thanks, Karen and Mark and everyone else for putting it together.